Hello, it's Sonia here with Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today we are going to be making a dress for an 18-inch doll. So I have an eye hook or 5.5mm hook, and I am going to be using some decate weight yarn. So here it is. It's actually a multicolored, looks like we got a knot in it. Oh, no. Colored yarn here. It has some weird color runs. It's pretty, but it's, I don't know, they're almost like splotchy, if that makes sense. Now this is a pattern that I made in 2013, and the original pattern called for worsted weight yarn, and you could certainly use that, but I have this large ball of this decate weight and I think it's going to work. And also the original one called for sewing, and I'm going to try to do it with minimal sewing, so we'll see how this goes. Now for this pattern you will also need your G hook or 4.25mm hook, so we're using 2 hooks for this pattern. So it's not as complicated as it sounds, and we're going to use this decate weight yarn as I said earlier, and I think it's going to work. I think it'll be okay. This dress should fit a variety of 18-inch dolls. I have American Girl dolls, but I think the way this dress is made, it should fit almost any 18-inch doll. Alright, so to get started, we will be using the G hook first. So what you want to do is you're going to work a chain of 26. Okay, so here we go. I have my 26 chains. So what we are going to do is we are going to double crochet in the 4th chain from our hook, working in the back bump. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to turn that over, and I'm just going to work in that back bump, working that double crochet, and we're just going to continue. So that skipped chain 3 will be your first stitch, and we're just going to continue to double crochet across, so that at the end of your row 1 here you are going to have a total of 24 double crochet. So I am going to keep working my double crochet. Oops. Yeah, keep the hook in the loop, and I'm just going to keep working my double crochet across. So I will meet you back. Oh my gosh, did it again. I'll meet you back at the end of this row. Okay, so here is my row 1. I have 24 double crochet, so let's get ready to work row 2. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and this dress is actually made in rows, so you can see about the kind of splotchy color runs. And it's weird, in my viewfinder here it looks almost blue, but this is more like a very violet purple, so it's very interesting how colors translate through a camera. Alright, so we are working in the back loops for the remainder of this pattern. So we are working slip stitch in the back loop, and you just want to keep in mind to keep your stitches nice and kind of on the looser side, just nice and relaxed. We don't want to, we're slip stitching all the way across in the back loops. So just keep a nice relaxed tension. So you'll have 24 slip stitch at the end of row 2 here. And it helps too when you're working slip stitch if you have a pointier hook. So as you can see, this hook, it's kind of has a nice pointy tip. And that's also, I love boy hooks. These are my favorite hooks. I know some people don't like boy hooks, but they're my favorites, and I find them to be really great for slip stitch especially, but I like them for any stitch. Alright, I'm going to keep going, finishing up my row 2, and I will meet you back. Okay, I'm almost at the end of row 2. So what you want to do is you do want to slip stitch in that last chain 3, that skipped chain 3. So just right on the top there, just work your slip stitch. Okay, so now we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And now we are on the right side of our work, and we are going to slip stitch again for rows 3 and 4. So you want to turn your work, so this is how it is laying flat. To be able to find your stitch, turn it this way, and then you can easily see that back loop right there. These are all the tops of the stitches, and it just makes it easier to find where you need to work. So right in that first stitch there, again, I'm keeping a nice relaxed tension. It's very easy for your stitches to get too tight working slip stitch in crochet. A lot of times slip stitch is just used for joining rounds. At the end, if you're working in the round, you'll join with a slip stitch, but it's its own stitch in its own right, and you can create a lot of neat fabrics using slip stitch. And that's what we're doing. So we are just going to continue to slip stitch all the way across. Again, I'm kind of keeping a nice, relaxed, almost loose tension. And that's what you want to do. So I'm going to work row 3 and then work row 4. That's going to be the same as row 3 in slip stitch. So I will meet you back. All right, so I finished up my row 4 here. So now we want to actually switch to our I hook or 5.5 millimeter hook. So I'm just gonna, we will go back to G, but we're going to use I right now. And so what we want to do to complete row 4 is we are going to chain 15. All right, so we've got 15 chains. Now we want to, we're going to start row 5. So with our I hook, we are going to slip stitch in our second chain from our hook in our back bump, and we are going to slip stitch in the next 13 chains. So we are going to have a total of 14 slip stitch. So I'm just going to turn my chain over, and there's my back bump right there. I'm going to insert my hook in that back bump and just slip stitch in that chain using my I hook. There is a reason why we are using the I hook. So this part of the pattern is actually the top of the dress, like the bodice of the dress. And this part of the dress is made entirely in slip stitch. So as you can guess, slip stitch is a very short stitch. So if we used it in G hook, it would be really, really compact. So using the I hook kind of helps balance out the top of the bodice and the bottom, the skirt. So once you get farther in the pattern, you will kind of understand. Probably just not making a whole lot of sense right now, but I do have a method to my madness, I promise. And I have one more stitch. Alright, so now I'm going to switch back to my G hook. So it might seem a little tedious, but it's not too bad. Alright, so now we're going to work back. This is the skirt part. And in our first stitch, we are going to work a double crochet in our back loop using our G hook. And so we're just going to continue to work our 24 stitches here, our 24 double crochet, and now we have another color change. We have a peach. So I'm going to keep going, working my double crochet in my back loop here, and then I will meet you back. Okay, so here's row 5. I've worked my double crochet, so let's work row 6. Row 6 is going to be a slip stitch row for the entire row, but we are going to slip stitch in these first 24 stitches with our G hook, and then our last 14 stitches we are going to use our I hook. So just finding that back loop, working that slip stitch. So we're slip stitching in these first 24 stitches and using our G hook. Now, as you can see, this does work up pretty fast once you get the hang of it. Like, you can really kind of zoom along with this project. It's, I think, a fast one. Alright, so that is my last stitch for the skirt part. Now I'm picking up my I hook, and now I'm going to slip stitch in the back loop in my last 14 stitches here. So I'm going to finish up this row off camera and I will meet you back. So I finished up row 6 here. So let's work row 7. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And rows 7, we are just slip stitching all the way down, but we're going to slip stitch in the first 14 with our I hook, and then we are going to slip stitch in the last 24 with our G hook. And then row 8, we are actually going to be repeating row 6. So you're going to slip stitch across using your I hook in the first 24 stitches. Let's get that right. You're going to slip stitch across using your G hook in the first 24 stitches, and then you're going to pick up your I hook and slip stitch in the last 14. So I will meet you back at the end of row 8. Okay, so here is the end of row 8. So we are going to chain 1 and turn our work. And now we're going to work row 9. This is a right side row. So again, we're going to slip stitch in that first 14 stitches, working in the back loops using our I hook. And then our last 24 stitches, we are going to work double crochet in the back loops using our G hook. So that's in keeping with our skirt pattern here, because it's 1 row of double crochet, 3 rows of slip stitch, 1 row double crochet, 3 rows slip stitch. So I'm busy talking, I'm not sure how many stitches I have. 13, 1 more, 14. So now I'm going to get my G hook and just double crochet in this last 24 stitches, working in the back loop for row 9. So I will keep going here and I will meet you back. Okay, so here we go. We have finished up our row 9. So rows 10 and 11, we will be repeating rows 6 and 7. So again, just slip stitch with your G hook in the first 24, and then slip stitch with your I hook in the last 14 for row, so that would be row 10, so that's what row 6 was. And then row 7, chain 1 turn, slip stitch in the back loop in with your I hook in the first 14, and then slip stitch in the last 24 with your G hook. So I will meet you back at the end of row 11. Okay, so I finished up row 11 here, so let's get ready for row 12. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we are going to slip stitch in our first 24 stitches just like we've been doing with our G hook. So nothing unusual here. Okay, so I've worked my 24 slip stitch. Okay, sorry, my battery died. So let's continue with row 12. So we are now switching to our I hook. And what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in the next 11 stitches. And then we will leave the last stitches not worked. So that's 2. Okay, so we have 3 stitches that we're not going to work here, and actually what we're creating just like a little bit of a strap here. So now we are going to work row 13. So row 13, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we are going to slip stitch with our I hook in the next 11 stitches, and then we're going to switch back to the G hook and then work double crochet across for row 13. And then row 14, you're going to use your G hook and you're going to slip stitch in your next 24, and then with your I hook you're going to slip stitch in the next 11. And then row 15 you're going to work your slip stitch in your 11 stitches with your eye hook, and then you're going to work the double crochet. So you're going to continue to work in pattern up to row 23, or I'm sorry, you're going to continue to work in pattern. I'm actually looking at my notes here. We're going to continue to work in pattern up until row 21. So what that means is, as I said before, 1 row double crochet, 3 rows slip stitch, and then this part, this is the bodice of the dress, will always be slip stitch. So just keep working in pattern until row 21. So I will meet you, I will meet you back at the end of row 21. Okay, so now I finished up to row 21. So let's get ready for row 22. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and we are just going to slip stitch across in our 24 stitches, and then we're going to slip stitch across in our 11 stitches here, and then we're going to do another step. So let's do that. So we're going to do the 24 with our G hook, the 11 with our I hook, and then I will get back to you. So here we are at the end of row 22. So to finish this up, we need to chain 4 with our I hook. And that is the end of row 22. So now we need to get ready for row 23. So row 23, working in the back bump of our chain, we are going to slip stitch in the second chain from our hook, and we're going to slip stitch in the next 2 chains, and now we're back in pattern. We're going to slip stitch in these 11 stitches. Then we are going to take our G hook and slip stitch in the last 24. So I'm going to do that, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I finished up row 23. So now you can see it's starting to look dress-like. So what you're going to want to do is repeat in pattern up to row 29. So our next row would be a slip stitch row, and then their next row would be a double crochet row. So just keep in pattern, just like we've been doing down here and here, up to row 29. So I'm going to keep going, and then I will meet you back at the end of row 29. Here we go. I just finished row 29. So you can see this very interesting colorway here of this yarn. This is ice yarn. I don't think I said that earlier. It's DK weight, but it's ice yarn. That's the brand of it. Okay, so now we are going to work row 30. So what we're going to do, still using my G hook, and we're still keeping with the pattern, we're going to chain 1 and turn. So what you're going to do is you're just going to work the 24 slip stitch, and we are not going to slip stitch in the last 14. So you're going to stop on stitch 24. And then rows 31 and 32, you're going to repeat row 30, just chaining 1 and turning and working your slip stitch in the back loop. So we finished row 32, and now we're going to work row 34. We're going to chain 3 and turn our work, and this will count as a double crochet. And now we're just going to double crochet across, so we're in keeping with the pattern. So you just want to go in the next stitch because this counts as a stitch. So if you worked in here, you would actually be adding a stitch. So you still want to have your 24 double crochet. So I'm going to keep going, and I will meet you back at the end of row 33 here. So here is row 33 finished. So we're going to get ready for row 34. So we are going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we're going to slip stitch in that first stitch here in the back loop. And we'll slip stitch in, so my loop is a little loose on my hook there. Let's fix that. There we go. So we're going to slip stitch in our first 24 stitches here in our back loop. So I'm going to do that, and then we will continue with row 34 because it will not be done yet. So now we're going to be starting the back of the dress. So let me finish up my 24 slip stitch here, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so I have one more stitch here for row 34. So again, we're just going to work in that, on top of that chain 3, working our slip stitch. And now I'm going to switch to my eye hook, And what you want to do is we are going to chain 15. Sorry, my dress she was sliding off the desk there. Okay, so we have our 15 chains. So let's get ready to work row 35. So what we want to do with our eye hook, we're going to work in the back bump of our chain, and we are going to slip stitch in that second chain from our hook, and we will continue to slip stitch across our chain. So you're going to have a total of 14 stitches, and then we're just going to continue to slip stitch working with our working back on the dress here and using our G hook. So second bump from our hook, just working that slip stitch, and we want to have a total of 14. So here is my last stitch here on my chain. And now I'm going to go back to my G hook and just continue working on the skirt. So here we go, here is row 35. So what we want to do is rows 36 through 47, we are going to just be repeating our pattern sequence of working the 3 rows of slip stitch with our G hook on the skirt, and then working slip stitch here with our I hook, so, and then the 1 row of double crochet, and again working everything in the back loop. So I will meet you back at the end of row 47. Okay, so here we are, we're at the end of row 47, so let's get started for row 48. So we are going to chain 1 and turn our work. If you see my hands, I have vitiligo and it always shows up in the summer, so that's what that is, in case you were wondering. I get that sun on there, and then I feel like I get more and more spots every year, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so let's keep going here. So I am going to work in my back loop here, and the next, or in our first 24 stitches like we've been doing using our G hook. So here we have our 24 stitches, so let's pick up our I hook and finish up this row. So what we're going to do is we are just going to work our slip stitch in the next 5 stitches with our I hook, and we are not going to work the rest of the row. So we're going to stop right there. So I did 5 stitches, and then we're going to keep going with our patterns. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And so we are going to slip stitch in the first 5 stitches with our I hook. So this is the back of the dress. And then I'm going to pick up my G and then continue with my pattern here. Working double crochet, made that stitch tight. So I'm just going to keep going, working the double crochet. So now what we are going to do is we are going to keep working in pattern up to row 50. So I'm going to keep working in pattern and I'll meet you back at the end of row 50. Okay, so here we are at the end of row 50. So what we want to do is we want to chain 10. So I have my 10 chains, so let's get ready for row 51. So row 51, we are going to be working in that back bump with our eye hook. So we're going to be having a total of 14 stitches, because we're back with our original stitch count. And now we're back on our dress part here, so 5 stitches. Okay, so now we're just going to continue row 51 here, picking up our G hook and then continuing to work the slip stitch. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to work in pattern with our 3 row slip stitch, 1 row double crochet. So we are going to end on row 64 and then we're going to get ready to attach our dress, turn it into a dress, because right now, I mean, it's kind of like a dress, but we'll get there. So again, we're going to work in pattern up to row 64 and I'm going to see if we can avoid some sewing here, and so I will meet you back at the end of row 64. Okay, so I ended on a row 63 and I said to end on a row 64, so I was trying to figure out how not to sew, because my original pattern I had sewing, and if you want to sew it you certainly can and then just work row 64, but I don't want to sew. So let's figure this out, how to turn this into a dress without sewing. So we are going to be working row 64 because we still need to finish up this part of the back of the dress, but we're going to attach the sides at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and turn our work, and I have the right sides touching already, so I've got it folded here. So these are the ends of row 1 here, and then here is the current row that we are working on. So what you want to do is we are going to attach, or we are going to insert our hook in that first stitch of the ends of row 1 in the front loop, and then we're going to work in the back loop here like we've been doing, and we're just going to work a slip stitch through all of that, and you're going to do that for these 24 stitches to attach the sides of our dress, and it should leave an almost invisible seam. So the ends of row 1 front loop, and then your last row back loop. Sorry, I'll pause. I thought I heard somebody yelling outside, but it's my son watching something in the other room, but it really sounded like it was coming from outside, so yeah, let's keep going here, finishing this up. Kind of freaked me out there. So we live in a very quiet neighborhood, so to have somebody yelling outside would be really uncharacteristic for where I live. And I am still using my G hook here. I'm not sure if I said that. And so this is that chain 3, so I'm just going to pop my hook in there and then work that stitch. So let's take a peek here. So there we go, we are attached and it looks almost invisible. We still need to finish up row 64. So I'm going to grab my eye hook and I'm just going to continue stitching up this side, and I'm going to see if we can attach the shoulders too without sewing. So I'm kind of updating my original pattern. Now if you do not like this method, then feel free to sew. So I'm just working my slip stitch up the side here. But sewing is not my favorite thing to do. I'm actually quite good at it, to be honest. Not trying to brag, but I've always had a knack for it. I just, hand sewing that is, machine sewing no way. Me and machines, we do not get along very well. The hand sewing, I'm just pretty good at it, but I don't enjoy doing it. So I try to avoid it if I can. Okay, so we have one more stitch. Alright, so we have finished row 64 and we have attached our dress. Get a little more yarn here. So if we look at, that's the back, here is the front. So now we need to work on attaching these shoulders. So what I'm going to do, because this will help with ends, so I'm going to turn my dress inside out. So this is the right side facing. I'm going to turn this inside out. And now I'm going to just slip stitch across this shoulder seam here. Put my hook back in there. So I'm going to attach my, actually I'm going to use my G hook for this, because I think it'll be easier to get in there. So we have our G hook. Just going to chain one, and I'm just going to go right on the end there. And right on the end here, just poke my hook in there, and I'm going to slip stitch across. So I'm just trying to be as neat as I can. Now again, if you do not like this, then absolutely sew it. So that might be the end there, in that corner. So I'm going to just turn it right side out to see if I like this. Okay, so I went off camera just to look at it, and I think it's okay. Now what I'm not loving is you can see that little bit of a gap. So what I'm going to do, and this is what you can do with finishing, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a tail here when I cut my yarn. And this is just kind of taking your project the extra mile. So I'm finishing that guy off, so here it is. Let's get her right side out. So here we have it right side out. So you can just see that kind of poking out there on the end. Don't love that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tail, and when I'm weaving in these ends, when I get here, I'm just going to use that end to kind of close that there, just to give that a nice clean finish. Like I said, I'm pretty good with sewing, so it's a little bit of sewing, and so you can do that. That's just a little trick that you can do. You know, when you're weaving in your end, sometimes you can kind of use that end to kind of just help your work, you know, just take it the extra mile, so that when you look at this armhole here, it's going to have a nice clean edge, because I'm just going to take that little stitch and kind of tack that down with my end. So I am going to slip stitch on this other side here, and I will meet you back. Here is our dress. Everything has been stitched, ends have been woven in, so now we just need to finish this up by attaching a little button loop, and then you'll need to sew your button. So what you need to do, so I am going to attach my yarn right on this corner here. And you can attach it on either corner, like if you're a left-handed crocheter, it might be more comfortable for you to attach it there, but I'm going to attach it here. And I'm just going to chain 1, and I'm just going to slip stitch right in that same stitch just to anchor that yarn in there. And now I'm going to chain 5. Okay, so I have my 5 chains. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go back in that stitch and work my slip stitch. So we're just making a little button loop here, like that, and then you can cut your yarn. And so then to finish up your project, I already have my button, so here's my button right here. So I'm going to sew that on there, and then you'll use your little button loop. So this button's about a 1/2 inch wide, and you can easily test it by, like you can just see, I'm pulling that through to make sure that works, and it does. So I'm going to sew that there. I'll weave in that end, and then my little dress will be done. I'll probably block this gently because this yarn's been sitting for a little bit. And then your mini dress is all done. So I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.